Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Whiting. I'm Dean of Harvard University's Graduate School of Design, where you are. And it's my honor and my pleasure to welcome you here as you join us in person or via the internet for this important conference, African Landscape Architecture's Alternative Futures for the Field. We have live captioning for our virtual and in-person audiences. You can see instructions and a QR code here on the screen, and if you're virtual, it's at the bottom of your screen at the CC. If you have any questions, please visit the AV booth at the top, and Matt always likes company, or send a message via the chat function. So I'm sure that many of the GSD's over 15,000 alumni are joining us today. I want to give a shout out to three who are all speaking today, all three in the first panel this afternoon, in fact, Johan van Pappendorp, Chelina Oudber, and Arthur Adeya. Thank you all for traveling back to campus to share your experience and your insights. Chelina and Arthur, I'm grateful to you for your dedication to the GSD's Alumni Council. Johan, I want to give you a special welcome because you're back here in Gun Hall, I understand, for the first time in 50 years? So I hope you find the building as exciting and as beautiful as it was when you left it when it was only a 3-year-old.
Much better. It's very mature.
Thank you for coming back. It's exciting to have someone back who's been gone for so long. So this conference is co-hosted by the Department of Landscape Architecture and the Department of African and African American Studies here at Harvard, with generous additional support from the many programs and organizations listed on this slide. I'm not going to read them all, otherwise all my time will be used up. So while this conference is co-hosted by a village, an effort like this needs a dedicated leader. And I want to thank Gareth Doherty for all his work envisioning and organizing this gathering. As many of you know, Gareth spent his sabbatical visiting landscape architecture programs across Africa, recognizing the value of showcasing them, but also the urgency of connecting them to one another as well as to others across the globe. Please join me in thanking Gareth. In his article, Globalized Templates and Urban Imaginaries in Harvard Design Magazine's, the 50th issue of the Harvard Design Magazine, Professor Edgar Pietersee, who directs the African Center for Cities at the University of Cape Town, zeroes in on the seemingly insurmountable challenge facing the continent. African cities, Edgar wrote, are confronted by an impossible imperative. They need to transition to environmentally efficient operating systems through next-generation infrastructure and land use instruments without the requisite political or financial resources. And they need to do this while attending to pent-up historical demand for essential services amid dramatic urban growth. Today and tomorrow we'll elaborate on this challenge, but the conference roster promises to dodge the adjectives impossible or insurmountable. The 5 panels will bring to light many issues, but also many practices and many possibilities. It's my hope that this conference helps to pave the way. Actually, that's probably the wrong phrasing for a landscape architecture conference. Helps to drive forward a thriving future for African landscape architecture. But I am just an amuse-bouche to a full buffet of extraordinary speakers today. Now, please join me in welcoming Professor Jacob Olupona, Chair of the Department of African and African American Studies, Professor of African Religious Traditions, and Professor of African and African American Studies here at Harvard. Jacob, there you are.
Thank you, Dean Whiting, and thanks to all our colleagues and friends and students who are here. I'm Jacob Kende Olupona, UK Foster Professor of African American and African Studies, and professor of African religious traditions at Harvard Divinity School. We in the Department of African and African American Studies are quite thrilled to be here and to sponsor or co-sponsor this very important conference. This is the second time we have collaborated on a major event like this. The first was 6 years ago in 2019 with a groundbreaking conference on sacred groves, sacred parks, Orisha landscape in Brazil and West Africa. And I'm hoping that this is not going to be the last. That conference was remarkable in so many ways. It brought together a wide array of scholars and practitioners from West Africa and Brazil into a very rich set of discussions among people that may not otherwise have crossed paths. It had far-reaching impact, and it was all about landscapes and spirituality. Spirituality is central to African landscape. I recall describing that previous conference as a contribution to theology. Indeed, landscape architecture and design have so much to offer the study of spirituality and of African and African American studies. One of the books I wrote titled The City of 201 Gods, Ile-Ife in Time, Space, and the Imagination. I guess it was one of your colleagues here who, in discussing the book with me, said to me that, Jacob, I think you're also in landscape architecture. I accepted that, and I want to be thankful to all of you. It is also interesting to know that I teach a course at Harvard here, African Spirituality and the Modern Times. And it had 350 students enrolled in that class. These are just pointers to some of the new interests that we are seeing among our students. And the more reason why these interdisciplinary studies and the partnership that we crave for between AAAS, African American and African Studies, and the School of Design should really continue. So I want to thank the dean and professors who have made this thing possible. It's about the vision of One Harvard that one of our past presidents used to talk about. That even though we belong to different schools, like the collegiate system copied from Oxford and Cambridge, we have a lot in common, and we are proud of this vision and this heritage. We recognize Professor Gareth Doherty, affiliate faculty member in the Department of African American Studies, for his outstanding role in organizing this conference. His efforts have built important bridges between Africa and Harvard, linking our departments through his innovative research and teaching, which also reaches students from the Harvard Extension School and 8 universities in Africa, many of whom are joining this conference online. I want to state it again to thank him most sincerely for this initiative and for thinking about linking up with African students who are in African universities so that they can gain from the experiences of teach here at Harvard. So thank you very much, Gareth. We also acknowledge the Salata Initiative project on the impact of coastal erosion in the Gulf of Guinea with Professor Achapong, Agbiboa, Adejumo, and Doherty as another example of collaboration among our departments that leads to new and existing impact. on Africa. The design of the built environment is crucial for Africa's future. Just even listening to what the Dean said earlier on today will remind us of this their need and the challenges that we face as a continent. And the impacts of climate change with increased temperature, extreme weather events, coastal erosions, and urban flooding is threatening lives and livelihoods across Africa. Landscape architecture possesses many skills that can make the world a better place. Equally important are Africans' poetry, practices, spirituality, oral traditions, proverbs, and so on and so forth, which offer valuable lessons for the rest of the world. If you permit me to say, the conference I referred to earlier on that we had 6 years ago, a few years ago here, was really mind-boggling for us because we brought to campus here architects and designers who were using the symbols and images of Orisha to construct buildings, to do planning for government and for the state. Africans who came here were shocked. Where were they shocked? Because some of them at home do not even see the importance of these Orisha traditions in their day-to-day livings, not to talk of even in design of architectural plans. We are thrilled that this conference will explore these issues over the next day and a half, and I'm looking forward to the presentation and discussion that follow. In closing, I wish to welcome all our guests who have made this long journey to be here, and to those that are joining us online. I extend special warm greetings and welcome to Princess Adedoyin Talabi Faniyi, who has traveled all the way from the Osun Sacred Grove in Osogbo, Nigeria. We welcome you, ma, to this gathering. Here, Osun, we are truly honored to have you with us once again, and deeply appreciate the opportunity to share in your wisdom. Let me again, without overstating it, speak to our Dean. That Dean Whitten, we hope in our department that this will not be the last initiative that brings AAAS and the School of Design together. We count on your cooperation and your love for us on this campus. Thank you very much for coming. And now I wish to welcome Professor Gary Hilderbrand to the podium.
Good afternoon. Jacob, thank you for your beautiful words. Thank you for the department's strong support. You're a great partner for our school. And thank you for the presence here today. It's wonderful. Good afternoon to this remarkable audience here and online. And welcome to the GSD, and welcome to the African Landscape Architectures Symposium. It's been a long time coming, and it's exciting to be underway. I'm Gary Hilderbrand, Peter Louis Hornbeck Professor in Practice of Landscape Architecture and Chair of the Department of Landscape Architecture here at GSD. And on behalf of my colleagues in the department and the school, it's really an honor for me to welcome you here. Thanks, special thanks really to our public programs team for the great work they do in supporting these events. Thanks to Sarah Rafson, Raquel Rivera, and Matt Smith. Just an amazing team. It'll be flawless. Thanks also to Dean Whiting and the many sponsors, which I know Gareth will speak about. The 5 panels in tonight's keynote address present a panorama of practices, pedagogies, and forecastings that will allow us to probe how we might arrive at a place where we are further empowering Africans to teach the world about beneficial and just African transitions. How we might arrive at a place where the intellectual discourse and adaptive tools of landscape architecture and its allied disciplines in the continent's varied political economies will propel us to greater understanding of possible trajectories for African cities, coastlines, interior rivers, and other landscapes that urgently face the twin global crises of our time: climate and environmental justice. How might we arrive at a place where the exchange of information, ideas, frameworks, and speculations are conditioned by equivalence and reciprocity, guided by an ethical and moral stance that moves past aged ideas of the hegemony of exceptionalism and global colonialism, refuses extractive practices and solutionist ideologies, and moves towards putting educational, economic, and planning and design partners on equal footing that promotes truly shared outlooks and practices for managing infrastructural and cultural change in our time. Hopefully, we will prove out today and tomorrow that Africa and Africans possess the greatest agency in this picture. As we'll see in the hours ahead, we have indeed transdisciplinary expertise here to share at the GSD and across North America, as Professor Olupona said. But we're also going to see that Africa, too, has remarkable endogenous traditions of rural land tenure and occupancy, amazing cities with planning and design traditions, and self-reliant cultural practices that we are here to learn from. So again, we're truly pleased to welcome all of these guests and the spirit of shared exchange that they will bring. Now, let me say a few words of thanks to our esteemed colleague and friend and organizer of this convening, Associate Professor of Landscape Architecture and Faculty Affiliate of African and African American Studies, Gareth Doherty. This gathering is just one of the many remarkable outcomes from a multi-year project of Gareth's to connect with landscape architecture programs, practitioners, students, professionals in our allied disciplines, and many of the guests who are here today. His commitment to this, which included a full year of travel and field work, is nothing short of staggering. Gareth's work with the Salada Institute, which Jacob also mentioned, and the Gulf of Guinea, is demonstrating the urgent need for climate adaptation, which is central to the work of landscape architecture and will always be. And we're thrilled to have some of his teammates here, including Tanji and Jacob. You're here somewhere. Hi, Tanji. Gareth has shared much of this amazing work with us in many venues, and now we're fortunate to share in this collective here today and tomorrow, which I know will have also many tentacles and offshoots for next efforts. Congratulations, Gareth. And please accept our enormous gratitude for what is unfolding here today and tomorrow and beyond. She'll send it to the house. Welcome.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Gary, for the very kind introduction and flowers. So, good afternoon. Ekasan. I'm so happy that we're all here in person and online, and those who might be watching the recording in the future. I'm very much looking forward to the discussions over the next couple of days. We're here to learn about African landscape architectures with an S. This S is very important because it represents a plurality of forms of practice. When we speak of landscape architecture in Africa, we're including landscape architecture in a formal, professional sense, but we also refer to landscape practices that are not necessarily by landscape architects. Landscapes are shaped all over Africa, but only 8 out of 54 African nations currently have a professional association of landscape architects. The S might also stand for situated. As the profession unfolds across the continent, as it surely will, we would do well to ask how to avoid the imposition of a Western idea of what landscape architecture is or should be in societies where it might not work. Instead, we might embrace situated landscape practices. This might require us to let go of the word landscape occasionally and embrace other terms and types situated in those landscapes. Symmetrical might be another S that we can think about, considering one another on equal terms. It's important not only to treat hard and soft sciences in the same terms, but also to treat nature and society equally and in those terms. And Africa and the West, we treat them symmetrically and on the same terms. The S could also represent the spiritual, as Professor Olupona mentioned. Time and time again, when talking about African landscapes, we hear about their transcendent qualities, and yet the spiritual dimension is often left out of mainstream discussions. And when we see the S, I also want you to think of 17. By some accounts, 17 of the fastest growing cities in Africa, or in the world, are in Africa. Some say it's 15, but let's say several, right? Still starts with an S. And by 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. As shapers of the built environment, landscape architecture can offer so much to the future of African cities in helping them adapt to the realities of changing climates and the goals of social justice and racial equity. But the profession is barely existent on the continent today. And we do not yet have much of a role in the shaping of African cities. The conference is a challenge to landscape architects to do more to shape future cities. This is the 5th in a series of conferences that I've had the honor of hosting or co-hosting over the last 20 years at the GSD. The last was 6 years ago, as Professor Olupona mentioned. We had a conference on sacred groves and secret parks, which explored the links between sacred groves in West Africa and their equivalents in Brazil that were built by enslaved peoples and which punctuate Brazilian cities but are not so well known in the literature. Likewise, African landscapes are not that well known in the literature either. There are many reasons for this, including systemic racism and a historic bias against learning from the continent. This conference is part of a series of initiatives aimed at making African landscapes more visible and less colonial. Indeed, from visiting almost all the landscape architecture programs in the African continent, I think it's fair to say that most don't teach about Africa, and neither do we here in the West or teach about Africa, but we've been making some inroads into that in our department, thanks to our chair. But we've been collaborating with the Francis Loeb Design Library here at the GSD, and maybe we could have the next slide, to expand their African collections. And have been helped by Ines Zalduendo and Andrew Umuraku to create a research guide to accompany the conference. And it's organized around each of the panels. You can see a selection of the books on display in the library, and you can access the list using this QR code on the screen. So while the conference is organized around 5 panels and a keynote, we wanted to avoid imposing familiar terms and types when giving structure to the conference. Instead, the terms emerged from the amazing range of speakers that we have, and most of whom I had the pleasure of meeting during a year of fieldwork in Africa. So thank you so much for making this long journey. One of our speakers has just arrived after a 15-hour flight from Cape Town, and he came straight here, so thank you especially to Faniyi. The first panel will focus on the current state of the profession in Africa through the work of GSD alumni who are working in South Africa and Kenya. Second, later this afternoon, we'll focus on materialities through projects and practices in Morocco, Botswana, Rwanda, and the DRC. Our third panel tomorrow morning at the Smith Center across campus will focus on adaptation and how it intersects with social processes, with presentations focusing on the Great Lakes region and oases on the edge of the vast Sahara Desert, as well as on coastal erosion in the Gulf of Guinea. The fourth panel will address how landscape architecture is taught and might be taught in the future across the continent and beyond. The final panel will be a speculation on the future of the field in the Global South. And we have several speakers, including Jala Maizumi, who will also deliver the Aga Khan lecture next Tuesday, March 11th, and we're very excited about that too. There are so many people and institutions to thank. I want to thank especially our Dean, Sarah Whiting, department chairs, Gareth Hilderbrand and Jacob Olupona, for supporting this and allowing the conference to happen. And all of the sponsors, including the Weatherhead Center, the Provost Fund for Interfaculty Collaboration, Center for Middle Eastern Studies, the Al Walid Islamic Studies Program, who also sponsored Jala's visit, the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research, the Critical Landscapes Design Lab, and importantly, the International Federation of Landscape Architects felt it was so important to have this conference that they are also supporting it. I also want to recognize Mohamed Bazilla from Brazil, who attended the Sacred Groves Conference in 2019 and was so inspired by the conference that he applied to the GSD and then graduated last year. Muha is now working with Mass Design in Boston, and it was in a conversation with Muha that this conference came about, because he just assumed that we were going to have a conference. And we hope that this conference will inspire others to study landscape architecture too. In addition to the alums here present, we have a growing number of African students in our department. Eliza, Martha, and Toby, who are here. And a growing number of connections with the continent, as well as this very strong collaboration with the Department of African and African American Studies. And I'm also thankful to Professor Emmanuel Achiampong for his collaboration too. We welcome all of you and the many people who are watching us online. We invite you to participate as much as you can and to ask questions on the chat and so on. But just as the conference has been a collective effort to organize, I hope that we will collectively learn and co-produce the knowledge that we need to diversify our field and our educational programs and the projects that we build. And now I would like to welcome Princess Adedoyin Olushun, a Yoruba high priestess and one of our keynote speakers, who will perform the rituals which are necessary to clear the path for the successful outcomes of this event.
Greetings, the distinguished scholars, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the invitation for me to open the Conference of African Landscape Architectures. We start that by doing the libation. Libation is a form that we pay homage to the spirits of ancestors. And we use these leaves called Iwere Njeje to do the libation. It is capable of bringing down the positive energies and forces. And also the kola nut, Obi, is capable of driving away the negative forces. So we are using those for the libation. And I will start with the Iwere Njeje leaf. Iwere Njeje o, Njeje o, Njeje o. Parakun Obarisha, ba ba ba, ba ye ye, ba ipari pada soma mero, ba òkúta àròsọ má gbàjẹ́ o, àyàfọ́n tí a bá dáṣẹ́ o, kó rọ̀ mọ́ ṣàìgbà ṣàìgbà o, ṣàìgbà o, Olódùmarè, the creator of the largest mammals and smallest organisms, we pay homage. Ashe. The Egungun Ile, the guiding spirits of home, we pay homage. Ashe. The Orisha Oja, the guiding spirits of commerce and profitable ventures, we pay homage. Ashe. To all the positive forces in this great universe, we pay homage. Ashe. To all the mothers in great beyond, we pay homage. Ashe. To all the fathers in great beyond, we pay homage. Ashe. To all Irumale, Igbamale, we pay homage. Ashe. To Ibeji, the sacred children, we pay homage. Ashe. To all other Orishas, we pay homage. Ashe. To all the scholars in this great universe, we pay homage. Ashe. We pay homage to Oshun, the Orisha of living spring and waters of life. We pay homage. Ashe. May she cool path of this opening of the conference. Ashe. Thank you. Ore ye yo. Ore ye yo. Ore ye yo. Oshun. Thank you.
Ashe.
Ashe.